Hi, my name is Romain. I'm working with My Private Paris, and today I'm going to be your guide. I'd like to tell you about one of the greatest mystery of the medieval times. Have you ever heard of the Templars? Well, I'm sure you did. Basically, everyone did, or maybe would recognize their symbol or their clothes. But the thing is, the myth and the legends about them basically obscured the true reality of the facts. So today I'm going to take you through centuries to meet the Order of the Templars Knight. So if you want to talk about the creation of the Order of the Temple, first you have to mention the context. And the context? This is the Crusades. Look at this. This might be one of the very few remainings we have here in Paris from the Crusade. Indeed, in 1200, our king Philippe Auguste wanted to go to the Crusade along with his friend Richard the Lionheart, King of England. But to leave his city protected, he built this massive outer wall all around Paris. Those stones are 8 centuries old.
At the end of the 11th century, some new nomadic tribes appeared from the desert and steppes of Central Asia. They were called the Seljuk Turks. Those new conquerors turned upside down the fragile balance around the Mediterranean Sea. They severely defeated the powerful Byzantine Empire and took Jerusalem from the Muslim Fatimid Empire. Being really Orthodox Muslims, they forbid the pilgrimage to the Christ shrine. However, the pilgrimage was extremely important for the European Christianity, and the journey to Jerusalem was the most valuable of all. To help the Byzantine Christian allies and to free Jerusalem, the Pope called all the Western kingdoms to travel to the Holy Land to take back the Holy City. This was the beginning of the Crusades.
In 1099, finally the Crusaders took Jerusalem. After years of journeys, of fears, of pains, of suffering, the Crusaders, both soldiers and unarmed civilians, turned mad with the faith of the apocalypse, slaughtered all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They were told to have blood just at the level of their knees.
This slaughter was a huge mistake. Indeed, the Muslim world, still divided in multiple tribes, kingdoms and princes, was astonished with this unspeakable violence. With times, they took conscience of how necessary was their union, and they finally gathered under the banner of a brand new prince, Saladin. It was him that Philippe Auguste and Richard the Lionheart went to fight.
So Jerusalem is not taken, but the Holy Land is far from being safe for the pilgrims to come. And this is the reason for the creation of the Order of the Temple.
To better understand the creation of the Order of the Templars Knight, we are moving from this lovely district called Le Marais to the south of Paris on the left bank at the very heart of the Latin Quarter.
So Jerusalem was made a Christian, a Latin city, and yet the journey to the Christ shrine is far from being safe. Imagine the Middle East has dozens of little Catholics, Orthodox, Muslim kingdoms fighting each other. The journey to the Christ shrine is really not safe at all, and this is the reason why two knights coming from the very rich and powerful county of Champagne, Hugues de Pins and Hugues of Champagne, swore to protect the pilgrims. Those are the seeds of the order of the temple to come. But you have to understand how the situation here was weird and original. Indeed, you cannot be both a monk and a fighter. Indeed, many members of the clergy found the idea pretty strange and opposed to it. So the two knights, Hugues de Pins and Hugues de Champagne, asked from who was one of the greatest intellectuals of the medieval times, Bernard de Clairvaux.
Bernard de Clairvaux, venerated as Saint Bernard, was one of the main thinkers and religious leaders of its time. This monk, then abbot from Burgundy, was responsible for calling the European feudal lords for the Second Crusade in 1147. As well, he played a very important role in the development of many monastic orders. This is the reason why we stand here in front of the gorgeous Collège des Bernardins, only a few minutes away from Notre Dame. This monastery was founded by the Saint Bernard order. No wonder then that those two Champagne lords chose him to create their rules and constitution.
So in 1120, the order of the temple is created. According to their constitution, they made the vows to remain poor. This is why basically their symbol are two men on one horse, okay, which is the proof of their humility. So as well, they must not wear anything gold or shiny, they must not hunt with a hawk, which is a lord's privilege. However, since they need to be good fighter, they do not apply the monk diet.
Quite quickly, the order became very popular. Many Europeans made a lot of donations, from gold to horses and lands. From simple guardians of the pilgrims, the Templars' Knights quickly turned into a real military force.
So, in order to gather all those donations made all through Europe, the Templars' order created a wide network of what we call commanderies. The commanderies are like the Templars' equivalent of a monastery. But if we really want to know what a commandery truly looks like, we're going to have to leave Paris. We're going to have to ride to Coulommiers in the Parisian suburbs. Come on.
And so we took the car and we rode for approximately 60 kilometers to the east in the direction of Champagne to visit the commandery of Coulommiers.
So, we're here in Coulommiers. We're basically 60 kilometers away from Paris. If today that would be considered as part of the Paris suburbs, back in the medieval times, here you would be on the lands of Champagne. And if you remember well, the order was created by some dukes, counts and nobles from Champagne. So right now, today we are at the heart, at the origin of the order of the temple. We're about to visit what is called a commandery. So what is a commandery? Commandery is the basic unit of the orders of the temple administration, of the Templars administration. We're about to visit this one in Coulommiers. Come on, follow me. We have been welcomed by an association of volunteers that takes care of this place. It's only the two of us. The whole commandery is for us. We're about to discover what a commandery of Templars really is. as you can see, this is how is organized this Commandery of Templars. This place is neither designed to be a soldier's training camp, neither designed to be a castle or fortress, as I told you. No, this place is a place where Templars would live, would pray, but moreover would product, would grow plants, would manage the wealth to be sent to the Holy Land to support the Holy War, okay? So you can see here that there is the chapel that we're about to visit. One way to estimate the wealth of the Templars here in Coulommiers is the presence of this curious tower. It's called a dove tower. In the medieval times, dove and pigeons were used as a pretty pricey food, and their figures were considered as an excellent fertilizer. Only rich people could afford such a tower.
So that is the chapel, and to the left of it was the palace of the master of the commandery.
Basically, yes, this is what is called in French le logis, so that would be the place where most of the Templars would live. However, what you see there was built a little bit after the Order of the Templars disappeared by another religious military order called l'Ordre des Hospitatiers, the Order of the Hospital. But right now, what I would do is to visit this amazing chapel, knowing that it didn't change for the last 8 centuries. This one was built by the Order of the Temples, and it never changed.
Oh my! This is crazy. This is a chapel from the early 1100s, because this place was founded 1127.
Exactly, so we are not exactly sure when was this commandery built. For sure it was built a bit before 1174. So this chapel you see is almost as old as Notre Dame itself, and it's really most well preserved. Just to give you a few examples, if you go a little bit further into the chapel, and if you keep your eyes up, what you should always do when you enter a Gothic or an old medieval chapel, you can still see up there the remaining of a few paintings coming directly from the Templars. 4 angels, one for the west, one for the north, one for the south. So, as you can see around me, this chapel is not used anymore as a place of mass or prayers. It was now turned into a museum. However, if you observe it well, you realize that it was built exactly according to the Templars' mentality. First, it's humble, simple. Don't forget that the Templars swore to always remain poor, as Christ was. The size of the chapel gives us as well a pretty good idea of how many people used to live there. A small number, maybe 30 people at the very most. It is built according to the Gothic style, as all medieval buildings. You can see the broken arches. But more interesting, this strange exit just above the door. This exit, this access, these strange windows makes sure that the chief of the Templars can always have an access to the masses. This door, however, is called the Doors of the Dead. It gives you a direct access to the cemetery of the Templars. And last but not least, it remains a few mysteries in this chapel. For example, if you look at the 4 corners of the chapel, you can see faces, strange woman faces, each of the face having a different expression. Well, still today, it remains mysterious. We do not understand what those faces mean. Yep.
Do you have any idea where there are holes in the vault?
Yeah, of course. To start for the ropes, for the bells. Easy question, man. Easy question.
Well, what if I tell you that it's not exactly true?
Then show me.
And to prove my point, I'm gonna take you above the vault,
Wow.
walking on the roof of a chapel of the 1100s. Ever done that?
Never in my life, and I really want to do that.
Let's go!
Let's go.
Okay, so we are going to climb stairs that are back from the 1100s.
Watch your step.
How you doing there, Romain?
It's pretty hard, man. You're afraid to fall.
Feels, I mean, this is never open to the public. So we're walking slowly because there's not a single stair that is even to the other one. And we are getting to the roof of the chapel. Wow. Wow. Romain, look at that.
Oh man, it's insane. You have no chance of how lucky we are to access to this kind of things. Look at that. Well, Bertrand, I've never been in those kind of places. We only see that in books. It's like generally never open to the public. So just tell me, what is this place?
It is so exciting to see something like that because literally we're walking on the vault, on the stone vault of the chapel. And so that means that there's the space between the roof, the actual roof. We see it here, which is made of wood, and then tiles above it. By the way, this is original. This is from the late 1100, and this looks like, in much smaller dimensions, of course, to what burned 2 years ago in Notre Dame.
Oh, okay.
So you see that it's not the roof of the church or of the chapel, it is built above it. So there's this space, like an attic, in between the stone vault, and we see clearly on the ground the shape of these arcades, and it's stunning because we can walk on it, no problem.
So you have to imagine that those beams and those structures have been built 800 centuries ago, and it still stands. This wood is 8 centuries old.
And here are the holes I showed you earlier.
Oh, exactly.
You see them? So some of them used to be for the bells, you were right. So you can imagine that the rope attached to the bell was hanging down into the chapel. But then other were added to the other side, here. And this one we were told that it was for the echo inside of the chapel. So
Yeah.
by piercing, making this balance between the left side and the right side of the chapel, the echo of the singing was much better.
It's incredible. They thought about everything.
So the Templars, they became rich because they were given land. There's not a treasure with gold, the coins and things like that. It's the estate.
We're gonna repeat that so many times during this video, but there were no true treasures for many reasons. The first one is that you have to forget about mountains of gold coins. There is very, very few currencies during the medieval times. First thing, the real wealth are lands. Those lands are donated to the temple by lords or by small people, by peasants, and those lands cannot be sold. They are to remain into the temple.
Which means that most Templars are not fighters, they are farmers or
Exactly.
administrators.
Exactly. So, since there were like maybe 30 people living here, and we know that at the end of the order there was only 3 Templars living there, you can consider that maybe a third of them only were knights. Okay? Be careful, when I say knights, do not imagine one lone soldier. A knight is one fighter with one horse and 4 people around him to prepare the horse, prepare the sword, and to help him. All the rest are surgeons helping for the administration mostly.
Squires, sergeants.
Squires, exactly, yes, totally. So Bertrand, then, I have a question. Most of the people walking on those lands, working for the Templars, all those peasants, are they Templars? Are they members of the orders?
No, actually very, very few people have taken the vows, so are member of the temple. Very few of the people working here would have taken the vows. You said that at max 30 people lived here, and at the end of the order in 1314, only 3 Templars were still living here. It's not enough to farm all the land. So the Templars are to be seen in that way as an agricultural company. So they own a lot of land, they administrate, they manage the land, but most of the people working that land are local farmers. And for that, for instance, the land here was transferred to another congregation of monks. You mentioned the Order of the Hospital, and they maintained the estate until the French Revolution. So from 1314 to 1789.
Exactly.
At that time, the new government decides to sell all the wealth, all the estate of the French clergy. So it will be bought by private investors, not necessarily farmers, but investors who will then still employ the same people to work this land. Romain, I heard there is an underground passage right there.
Well, do you think we should go, Bertrand?
I think I should go, and I think you should want to come with me.
Okay, man.
But take the light, because it's going to be a little bit dark inside.
Okay, you're the one that took the decision. You're gonna have to face the consequence. Here we go.
Go first. Okay, let's go slowly because it's quite slippery.
Whoa!
So we are underneath the farm. Oh, it's rather safe. Look, they turn on the light for us.
See, according to the association, the people that welcomed us, we still do not have much idea what those undergrounds were used for. We're pretty sure that these, and probably these behind you, was simply a basement to stock things, maybe wine, maybe beer. But we have no idea if there is a vast network of undergrounds just beneath the commandery, And that would make sense. Most of the time, the Templars are super good in building fortresses. Remember what they were used for in the Holy Land, keeping fortresses. Then, that means that they always built a way to escape, okay? So maybe those undergrounds, tunnels, do exist in order to have the Templars running away in case of attacks. But you already know that it did not save them. Commanderies, like the one in Coulommiers, were maybe 700 in France. But at the top of them, at the head of all the commanderies, was the master commandery of Paris. It was right here where I'm standing, and it used to be called La Maison du Temple, literally the house of the temple, but you can simply call it the temple. Sadly, it's totally gone. Basically, all the commandery was destroyed in the 17th century, only the dungeon was left, and the dungeon was destroyed by Napoleon at the very beginning of the 19th century. There is nothing left from the main commandery of Paris. Only a very few historical panels like this one recall the existence of this master commandery. So the commandery, the temple of Paris, was so huge that it used to cover 9 blocks of what Paris is today. It was a very important place in Paris. For example, none of the royal troops would be allowed to enter it. So for example, in case you are chased for debt, you could hide inside the temple. The temple was like so strong, it was such a huge stronghold that the king used sometimes to hide his own treasure inside the temple. For example, the Iron King, that we're going to talk about a bit later, during the main Parisian riots of 1306, was hiding in the temple, in the big strongholds of the Templars. So it is often said that the Templars were rich bankers, loaning money, earning benefits, extending credits to the king himself. Well, it's not exactly true. You have to understand that in Christianity, working with money, being a usurer, is forbidden, is very bad considered, all right? So we should not really call them bankers. We should really not call them bankers.
They would indeed help the richest pilgrims to transfer their money to the Holy Land, thanks to the bill of exchange they invented. This would avoid the pilgrim to carry their goods during their dangerous journey. Moreover, the Templars' Knights used their worldwide network to play the role of diplomats. Look at this letter I found in French National Archives. Written in Uyghurs, this letter from the Mongol king is dedicated to the King of France in order to team up against the Muslim princes around Palestine and Syria. It was transferred to the king thanks to the Templars' network.
About baking though, as I told you, working as a usurer is really bad considered. However, some communities are authorized to do it. Communities considered as outsiders, marginalized. For example, the Jews. We're here in a street called Écouf. And Écouf in Old French means a bird of prey, a scavenger, showing you the very small consideration people had for usurers and Jews back in the medieval times.
Another community allowed to be usurers were the Lombards, a name given basically to all the North Italians. Still today in Paris, you can find the Lombard Street where all their banks and shops used to be.
You know, all those communities, the Jews, the Lombards, they were indeed very rich and attracted the attention and the greed of the King of France. At the beginning of the 14th century, from 1305 to 1310, all of them had all their belongings, all their goods captured, requisitioned by the King of France, and they were exiled. You can consider the massive arrest of the Jews and the Lombards as the great rehearsal for the massive arrest of the Templars' Knights to come. So, you cannot understand the fall of the Templars' order if you don't understand the rivalry, the harsh rivalry between the power of the Pope and the King of France. This rivalry is crystallized within the walls of this building behind me. This is called the Saint Chapel, a true jewel of the Gothic style, standing just a few meters away from the world-famous Notre Dame. So this building was built in the mid-13th century by the King Louis IX in order to welcome the Holy Christ relics that he bought, that he purchased a very astonishing price. The point of this purchase, the point of this symbol, was for the King of France to be, as he used to say, emperor in his kingdom, which means that the king wanted to have both the temporal and spiritual power. This is a first step toward getting rid of the Pope influence. In 1297, so almost half a century later, the Louis' grandson, the King Philip IV, nicknamed the Iron King, brought this rivalry to a brand new level. Indeed, he brought his grandfather's remains within the same chapel, next to the Christ's remainings themselves. Doing so, he made his grandfather, he made Louis, a saint, and his dynasty a saint dynasty. This is a very, very strong symbol. In 1303, so approximately 6 years after St. Louis was brought into the same chapel, the Iron King brought his troop to Italy to force the Pope into the king's will. So you really see that the king is hardly trying to get rid of the Pope influence. And for this reason, the Templars' Knight became a horror, a hindrance. Indeed, not only they became kind of useless after the Holy Land collapsed, after the fall of Acre, but in addition to that, the Templars' Knights were only answering to the Pope directly, depending on its order on the French territory. For this reason, the king started to think about getting rid of them. But you truly have to not forget the symbolic power of the Templars' Knight. Indeed, they are called the Order of the Temple, the Solomon Temple, still remaining in Jerusalem, which is now in the Muslim hands. In the Iron King's mind, the only temples left is where the Christ relics are. So that means Paris. Getting rid of the Templars' Knight means getting rid as well of this former temple and makes the king the new emperor, the new pope in France. Arresting in one time all the Templars' Knights, this is quite a huge operation for the King of France. So what he's going to do is to spread rumors, to just prepare the operation. From 1305, he's going to spread rumors containing always the same element. First, the Templars are supposed to worship some false gods, some idols. Second, all the new recruits entering the Templars' Knights order has to spit on the Christ cross. And third, the new recruits would have been forced to have homosexual relationships. Talking about this new idol, this new demon, just look up there. You see this little evil, half female, half male? His name is Baphomet. You might have heard this name before, but the first time it was ever mentioned in Europe was during the Templars' affair. Baphomet. It sounds like Mahomet, because this is probably a demon that the Templars were accused to bring back from the Middle East. Of course, most of those accusations are absolutely false, but the damages are real. This campaign of depicting the Templars as heretics started in 1305. In 1307, the king is ready. He's going to start the massive arrests. Now we need to know
happened to the Templars' Knight? Our investigation takes us to the Marais, to the National Archives. They were created during the French Revolution and remains today in what was a private mansion from the 18th century. Within those walls, all the history of France is resting. You could find here the documents of the coronation of the very first king of France during the Dark Ages, or even all the files of the French Revolution trials. Somewhere in this labyrinth of old papers, you can read the pieces of evidence used against Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. But this is not what we are looking for today. In this room, I have an unlimited access to all the archives of France in the form of microfilms. This first document I find is extremely interesting. According to it, dated from the 9th January 1144, a century and a half before the end of the order, the Pope is calling all Christians to actively donate to the order and to protect the Holy Land. This almost 9 centuries old document proves the active support the Pope used to give to the Order of the Templars' Knights. But the reason why I came here in the first place was to find the documents of the Templars' fall and trials. And finally, I find them. On the 14th of September, at the Maubuisson Abbey, the royal order to arrest all the Templars' Knights was prepared by the king and a few of his closest councillors and ministers. This is it. This is the document. According to it, the king, hearing all the terrible rumors about the heretic rites, decided to arrest the knights and process an investigation. It was secretly sent to all the police officers of the kingdom. On the 13th of October, it began. In one day, 138 Templars' Knights were arrested in Paris, included their great masters, Jacques de Molay. Most of those Templars' Knights were taken here, in the main jail of the medieval Paris, in the Conciergerie, in the palace of the city. They were tortured to admit all the heretic crimes they were accused of. Most probably, despite all the tortures and all the pain they endured, we are able to say today that maybe only a half of the Templars admitted those 4 crimes they were accused of. And eventually, I finally found, lost somewhere in centuries of French history, this microfilm. I had, just before my eyes, all the confessions of the Templars' Knight, duly and scrupulously produced by the Inquisition secretaries. Everything they confessed under the pain and tortures is right there before you. So, at the beginning of October 1307, this is around 138 Templars that are arrested in Paris. The king wanted to have like quick confessions, so they're massively going under tortures. We think today that maybe only half of those Templars' Knights admitted those false crimes. The problem being, of course, that if they would deny their crimes, or if they would maybe deny the confessions they give under torture, then they will be burnt alive. And this is for this reason that in 1310, around 60 Templars were burnt right here in this little park that used to be called the Jews' Islands. In 1310, 60 Templars are burnt on a massive pile of wood built right here, just next to the king's palace. In 1312, under the pressure of the King of France, and considering its very damaged image and reputation, the Pope decided to terminate the Order of the Templars' Knight. This was the end of the first Catholic military order after almost 2 centuries of existence. Being told about his life sentence in the royal jail, the very last master of the order, Jacques de Molay, who first confessed everything he was accused of, hoping he would save the order later, decided to deny his confessions and disclaim all the rumors and accusations. On the next day, the irate king had him condemned to be burned alive as well. He died on the same island, the island of the Jews, on the 18th of March, 1314. However, despite the king's greed and will to capture all the Knights Templars' properties, the Pope transferred most of their possessions to the other main military and Catholic order of the medieval times, the Order of the Hospital. I personally found in the National Archive the document attesting this decision.
So this is the end of the history of the Order of the Knights Templars. And yet, those Templars are by far one of the most famous history of the medieval times. And yet, there are two Catholic military orders, the Teutonic Order and the Order of the Hospital. And those ones still exist. The thing is, from the 19th century until today, the Templars became covered up with myth and legends. So, just as a conclusion, let's discuss a little bit about those myths and legends, and let's try to bust them.
First of all, the famous treasure of the Templars. It is a myth, as we explained in Coulommiers. This idea is based on the misunderstanding of the signification of what a treasure is in the medieval times. The wealth of the order is to measure with lands, fortresses, tax rights, even farms, but not with gold coins and jewels. It was not even the richest order existing then. The Cluny order, for example, was way older and way richer. About the Grail then, that they would keep in secret somewhere. Thank you, Indiana Jones. Back in the Templars' time, the quest for the Grail is a literary concept about the ultimate ideal of chivalry, mostly created by the writer from Champagne, Chrétien de Troyes. It is divided and distinct from the Holy Chalice until the 14th century. And anyway, in the medieval mentality, the faith in an item to be the Grail was more important than the reality of facts. As a result, several holy chalices used to exist since the 12th century in Italy, Spain, France, and it did not bother anyone. It's quite admitted that Jacques de Molay, the last master of the temple, would have cursed the king and all his relatives before being burned. However, none of the witnesses of that day reported any curses. Actually, this legend was probably created way later, during the 19th century, and was made for sure famous with the Maurice Druon's book, The Cursed Kings.
Alright guys, this is the end of this documentary. I truly hope you enjoyed it. So please do not hesitate to share it with your friends and to let us know what you felt about it, if you enjoy it, what you think about it. We are waiting for you in Paris. We are wishing you an excellent day. Bye bye.